Well, hey everybody, welcome to House Groups. I'm hanging out here with Eduardo, one of our young adult leaders, and we just wanted to touch base with you guys and have a quick conversation about some of the stuff that we are reading through Emotionally Healthy Discipleship right now. I hope that you got your copy. If for whatever reason you don't have a copy, it's not too late to jump in, so order yourself a copy. But Eduardo, first off, how's your day going, man?
It's going very good. It's chilly, but it's going very good. Enjoying the sun, and now that we have it here, I love it. I love to suck the sun and suck the vitamin C of it, and
Yeah. You are a fairly young father.
Yeah.
How is the dad life, man?
It has been good. It's been challenging. Parenting is very challenging. Whoever has kids will know that. But also, like, towards yourself, you learn a lot of things that you didn't even imagine about going through or thinking or things like that. So it's very good. Like, I really enjoy it.
That's
I
awesome.
wouldn't change at all. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, we're pumped to have you a part of the team, and we're pumped to just have this opportunity to sit down and have a quick conversation. What do you think of the book so far?
I actually am enjoying it very much because it brings something out that it makes you think deeper into your relationship with God and relationship with the church as a physical church or like as a church, like us as a church, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I started reading Pete Scazzero when I was in seminary. We were required to read another book that he wrote called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. It's like it's the similar concept, but it's focused more on like pastors and leaders. Okay. And so I read that one, and it changed my life. And then from there, I started digging into some of his stuff, and I just think what I love about the book for me personally is that I grew up in rock, so we're Pentecostal, charismatic church. And he comes from a similar background theologically, so some of the stuff that he writes about in terms of how he was formed as a Christian from when he first got saved are very relatable. But then it's also helpful in the sense that he also sees some of the potential blind spots that come in the Pentecostal charismatic movement sometimes. And I think that with this book specifically, some of this content, he's just really addressing some of the things that sometimes get missed in our discipleship as Christians. So I think that's super cool. But with that being said, I have a quick question that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this question in particular at some point throughout our night. But here is the question, okay? So there's actually, maybe you can help me with this before I pose the question. Actually, no. I'll pose the question, and then we'll build the metaphor from there. So here's the question, okay? How do you respond to the statement, much of discipleship in the church today is the spiritual equivalent of cladding? To what degree does that align or not align with your own experiences or observations? And maybe we could take a second to describe what cladding actually is. Do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, so cladding is putting a structure towards like building a wall. So there is different ways that you can do that. There is two ways that actually like building code talking about it. And in the book it says naturally and synthetic, right? Naturally would be the expensive way, like very rich rock that you can put into building a wall, or synthetic would be just like a cement, like just building a wall of cement and putting it up. It will look beautiful, but it's much cheaper and it's not as beautiful to kind of say.
So like the surface looks good, but like beneath the surface it's not as firm.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not as rich. So,
I see. Yeah.
And so that's basically cladding in building, and transforming that into the question that you asked.
Yeah.
I love that question because me, especially in my experience in Spain with the Catholics, we really see that cladding, synthetic cladding, that it's very superficial, so you don't get into the deep relationship into your brothers and sisters relationship or your yourself towards God. And it's a really good way to stop and think and say, okay, God, I am a synthetic or I'm a natural. Like, you see what I mean? So I want to be, for myself, I want to be a natural way, a deeper way that I want to connect with God, right? I want to see what is in God's heart, right? So.
Did you grow up Catholic?
I did.
Oh,
I did.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
my grandfathers were like, I grew up with them for many years, and I went to Catholic church. I didn't do any of their, I don't know how to call this. In Spanish, we actually will say rituals, but my father was a Baptist church, so he was a pastor in a Baptist church. So then I had that two side of it. So yeah, I grew up with mostly Catholic, but I had, my father was a
cool.
Baptist
That's
Catholic,
good to know. I know we have some people in different groups who come from a Catholic background, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that the illustration is just so on point, especially like as a pastor over the last 3 years. One of the biggest challenges I've found is that people who you're doing life with in the church, people that you're trying to serve as a pastor, a lot of us are just so busy that we don't have the time to really focus on the deeper issues of our lives that are causing us problems, the sinful patterns, the sinful behaviors, the sinful attitudes, whatever it may be. And I just think that there is this veneer of superficial Christianity that a lot of us settle for. Yeah. It's not to question our salvation necessarily, though, in some cases maybe that is something that we need to look long and hard at. Yeah. But for many of us in the Western church, there is this sense that we just focus on the surface. We focus on, making sure that we look the part and that we sound the part, we say the right things, we do the right things, but deep down beneath the surface, sometimes it's like there's some rotting going on. There's some decay going on at the core. And I'm excited about this book because he's all about trying to expose and get to the depths of what is really going on in the depths of our lives. So I think that's really good. Yeah, man.
So, second question, if I may ask, there is, we see in chapter 1 that there is 4 failures. So, seeing with the 4 failures, what would you recognize yourself more? So, I'm just going to read the 4 failures to just see it in mind. So, the first one in the book says, we tolerate emotional immaturity.
Immaturity,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Second of all will be, we emphasize doing for God over being with God.
Okay.
Third one will be, we ignore the treasures of the church history.
Yeah.
Right? And then the fourth one will be, we define success wrongly. So that would be the.
So which one of these resonates with me the most?
Yeah.
Man, it's hard to pick because I feel like in some way I resonate with all of them. If I had to pick one personally, I would say probably emphasizing doing for God over being with God. Obviously, it's both and. It's not one or the other. We get into a dangerous situation whenever we emphasize one to the neglect of the other. But I do think that in my experience as I grew as a Christian, as a teenager and into my young adult years, the emphasis quickly became serving and what am I doing and especially even going into ministry. It's like, studying and going to seminary and reading the Bible, and these are all good things.
Yeah,
they're all
absolutely.
very good things. Yeah. But very quickly in the active doing, you do get into a place in your life, if you're not careful, where you're not making time for just that simple quiet time with the Lord each day, where you're in prayer, reflecting on your life with God, reflecting on the things that you need to be focused on, confession, repentance, all these things. And so that's a big one. And then, honestly, the one that I'm probably at this point in my life most passionate about is that third point. I forget how he wrote that, neglecting the treasures of church history.
We ignore the treasures of church history.
Right, like I love the way that he breaks down these thoughts in chapter 1 about how we need to acknowledge that we are one stream in the great river of God. How our stream. So I talked about how I grew up in the Pentecostal charismatic church. Our church, Rock Church, is from that Pentecostal charismatic tradition. It has some beautiful things that it offers the Christian movement, but at the same time, every stream, you mentioned growing up as a Catholic. I would say too, it's funny, I have a Catholic missionary that just moved in down the street from me. And I've built a relationship with him. He's on it's called Catholic Christian Outreach. It's kind of like Power to Change down on Dalhousie campus. So I've gotten to be friends with him, and I grew up in a tradition that a lot of the times looks down on Catholicism because it only highlights maybe the negative aspects of Catholicism, and yet I'm growing this relationship with my friend Cameron, and I'm realizing like, wow, like this is a Catholic brother in Christ who loves the Lord.
Yeah.
He loves the Lord and he loves the gospel. So it's just like this idea of like, wow, like I come from a stream that has beautiful things that it offers, the global church, and it also has blind spots. And like Catholics or Anglicans or Baptists or Eastern Orthodox or whatever it is, they also come from streams that offer good things biblically, and maybe also have blind spots in other things that aren't necessarily biblical. So for me, that's just been so, I guess I'd say, liberating, just to spend time studying church history and looking at different traditions and kind of take the chicken, spit out the bone. But it also invigorates me about the specific things that Pentecostals and Charismatics are known for, and being proud of the things that we have brought to the church and to the world in the life of the movement. I mean, if it weren't for the Pentecostal movement over the last 100 years, we would not have seen as much evangelization and missions work globally. Like if you study the history of the Pentecostal movement, they were like just a spark in the 20th century for global missions work. It's amazing. But what about you? Is there one among the four failures that you resonate with specifically?
Yes, I do. I actually really agree with you in the same way. Like the second one, doing for God and not being with God. It's like when I read it, I'm like, wow, like I am serving, but I don't know what is in God's heart for me, right? So how can I know what is in God's heart if I don't spend time with Him? So for me, yes, I really agree that second one, it's a big point in my life to spend time with God, to know what is in His heart, and then I can do His will, right? Instead of doing and get caught up in that doing thing. So there is a phrase in the book that says people get caught up in that adrenaline of doing things and that doing. So instead of stopping and say, hey God, what is in your heart? What do you want me to pray for today? What do you want me cry for today? Put something in my heart, right? What is in your heart, right? So, and then the same way, the third one, it's a huge one, right? We caught up that ignoring the treasures of church history is true, man. We get caught up in the man mentality of there is thousands of different branches, denominations of churches and all this, and you get to know someone that is from another denominations, and then like it happened to me, it came to my head, they're this, so they have these problems. Instead of viewing it from God's perspective, say the church, it's God's creation. It's not like a man creation of these denominations. It's all in one that we should be loving together, coming together, looking towards God, right? Yeah. So that's I found a really good point in these days that we should come back to the essence of the church that God created, right? Instead of the man created those, those
Yeah.
branches or those denominations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have to be so defensive, like yes, it's okay to acknowledge that there are good things that other church traditions or streams offer, and it's also okay to be critical, not critical in like a cynical sense, but critical in like a truthful, like I want to be faithful to the scriptures. It's also okay to look at different traditions and say, you know what, I'm not sure if that's biblical. I think that a more faithful interpretation of the scriptures that God has inspired would be, this and that. And that's, I think, the journey that all of us are on, is it's like, at the end of the day, because of how we've grown up in our different traditions, we do have blind spots, and we can assume that every single thing that we were taught growing up is the biblical interpretation of things. And it's like, well, there's probably a lot of good that we got from our upbringings, and there might be, some stuff that we assume is biblical that maybe isn't biblical, but we're all on that journey together. But anyway, that's really good, man. I'm happy to hear that you've been enjoying the book. And listen, to all of you, we hope that you're enjoying the book as well. This is a good book. I think it's going to be just a positive impact in your life. But hey, now it's your guys' turn to continue the conversation. Our leaders have some discussion guides with way more questions to go through for the next little bit. So I want to turn it over to you guys and say, hey, enjoy your time talking through the content of the first couple of chapters of our book.